I reached in and lifted Steve straight up as Gary yanked the chair away. Grabbing Steve from behind, I wrapped my arms around his gut. Then I jerked my hands into his abdomen in what I hoped would be something close to the Heimlich maneuver. I didn't even know how I knew what the Heimlich maneuver was. Maybe it was on a poster, or perhaps on a TV cop show. Hell, I could have seen it as part of some stand-up routine at the Laugh Factory.
Come fly with me, come fly, let's fly away.
2 tickets to paradise and make it snappy.
Attention passengers, we need another volunteer.
Cabin crew, prepare for takeoff.
Hello, and welcome to Come Fly With Me and Other Travel Mischief. I'm John Lapidese, and these are my personal travel stories of adventure, mayhem, foolishness, and swinging through the jungle of life. Aruba. Me and the guys are there to capture the Cuckoo Canuco bus and other tourist mayhem. But on our last night, the party spins out to the edge, and I suddenly find myself performing the Heimlich at the Hilton. Except I don't know the steps. Aruba. Doing the Heimlich at the Hilton. Aruba is one happy island. It says so on their license plates. The first happy inhabitants were the Caquecho Indians, who came from nearby Venezuela to escape persecution. Then came the Spanish, who enslaved the Indians, ending their happiness. In 1637, the Dutch arrived and made everyone speak Dutch. Then came the most bloodthirsty intruders of all, the tourists. Their invasion has been relentless and unforgiving. It is they who insist upon mojitos at the pool bar, at the beach, and delivered directly to them as they stand in the warm surf. It is they who are now the guardians of Aruba's happiness, plus the nearby waitstaff. We were also happy to be in Aruba at the behest of their tourism board. The guys and I were here to collect video of their beautiful national park, fabulous beaches, dramatic rocky coast, ancient cave drawings, and thumpin' discos. There's lots of indigenous and colonial history throughout the island. There's also a pretty severe party culture here. Lots of clubbing, bar hopping, and then there's the Cuckoo Canuco bus. How do I describe the Cuckoo Canuco? It's a brightly painted safari party school bus. When the crew and I boarded, it was already brimming with half-drunk tourists. Actually, they were more like 7/8 drunk. The onboard social director encouraged everyone to be happier still by constantly shouting. So we rode around the island for a while as the crew photographed the tourists drinking and yelling out the window. I've heard that travel broadens one. This may not be true. Clubbing. Later that evening, we checked out the club scene. We went to one rockin' bar perched over the water. The kids on the dance floor were crazy, and the place shook with island energy. It was said tragedy had struck here. A few years before, some American kids had come to Aruba to celebrate their high school graduation. One of the girls was partying at this bar before she forever disappeared. Peering at the dark water below, I thought about her stepping from the bar down to the beach, and then it was such a sad contrast to the happy cavorting and woo-wooing all around me in the bar. One moment you're a partying high school graduate enjoying first sips of freedom, and then moments later, somehow the angels blink, and you slip suddenly into the wrong future. Hooked on a feeling. Aruba has the feeling of a mad rush about it. It seems that people come here for that overripe juice of stimulation. One could take Harley choppers around the island, race over the north coast on ATVs, and off-road in jeeps. Plus there's kite surfing, parasailing, and all the other stuff we enjoy watching on beer commercials. And that's not even counting the Cuckoo Canuco bus. We get to do it all. Four-wheelers, Harleys, Helis, and speedboats. We were ushered about by a tourist rep, an island local with the impossibly cool name of Rayon Coolman. Yes, that's his real name. That's how cool this place is. After long, crazy days trying to keep up with the tourists, we'd kick back somewhere nice, like a local fish place out on a pier. We'd eat and watch the dreamy sunset, and try to figure out which way Venezuela was. On our last evening, we ended up in our hotel restaurant. This was a little pricier than we were used to, but we had seen beautiful people dining here, and we felt we were beautiful too. So me and the guys washed off the sand and put on our best duds, which meant putting on our last clean shirts. At this restaurant, there was even a little wait for a table. So fancy. Everywhere else we had gone, we would just grab plastic menus and find someone to take our order. Now we had multiple forks, spoons, and even a tablecloth. We got our drinks and food and eased into our post-mortem of the first few days. This was a ritual we enjoyed at dinner, a summation of all the crazy shit that happened on these shoots. We would hash over and laugh about which one of us said the dumbest thing to a tourist or to our client, or, during the shoot, who had narrowly escaped injury with an animal, dog, fish, lion, monkey, or who almost fell off the truck, the jeep, the helicopter, that sort of thing. We were going on like this when I turned and saw my cameraman, Steve, kind of quiet and looking down at his plate. Steve was usually the most ebullient of the gang, so something seemed off. He coughed a little, and his shoulders shook. I offered, "Steve, you okay?" He didn't immediately respond, and leaning into him, I saw he was sort of drooling, and his eyes were glazed. He was also turning a strange color. I'd never seen a color so frightening. Remember JR recalls.
I kept watching him, and I think he was trying to, drink water or something. You could see he was struggling a little bit. And I looked at it again, and I'm like, "Are you all right?" And his eyes, fixed, and they got big. And then he shook his head no, in a frantic way. And I'm like, holy shit, he's choking.
I jumped to my feet, and Gary, our editor, /second cameraman, /sometimes sound man, well, does it really matter what his job was at a moment like this? Also jumped up. He instinctively seemed to know where I was going, and the two of us dragged Steve in his chair away from the table. I reached in and lifted Steve straight up as Gary yanked the chair away. Grabbing Steve from behind, I wrapped my arms around his gut. Then I jerked my hands into his abdomen in what I hoped would be something close to the Heimlich maneuver. JR also hoped.
And my first thought when you were doing it, because I was across the table and hadn't got over there yet, is I'm like, you got to get your arms up higher, I was thinking.
I didn't even know how I knew what the Heimlich maneuver was. Maybe it was on a poster, or perhaps on a TV cop show. Hell, I could have seen it as part of some stand-up routine at the Laugh Factory. Gary remembers his initial thoughts.
I hope Steve doesn't die. I hope you know how to do the Heimlich. It's one of these things where it's like when there's a crisis situation and sort of like time feels like it's going fast and slow at the same time. So you're thinking a bunch of jumbled thoughts. I think anytime you see somebody, especially somebody you know, in distress, I was just concerned about them. I just remember hoping I hope John knows how to do the Heimlich, because I've learned it, but I don't remember how to do it anymore. It has to do with where you push and how you have your hand. You're not supposed to do it directly with your fist. You're supposed to put your fist into your hand or something. Do you remember how to do it now?
No, I think I was just improvising then, actually.
You were just lucky that you didn't break his ribs.
But there I was, holding up Steve, who was a big guy, and giving him abdominal thrusts in Aruba. My mind raced. What was supposed to happen now? Steve was heavy. It was hard to keep squeezing his gut. I looked over at the waiters. They just stared back. No expression on their faces. No offer of help. They just stood there, island style. So I kept squeezing Steve. Gary, and now JR, who was our actual sound man, came over to help me hold up Steve. But it was my job to keep jerking my arms tight around him, again and again. I tried to see his face. What was going on? Shouldn't a piece of steak go shooting from his mouth? Maybe he was already dead, and I was just playing with the corpse. I told myself not to stop, no matter how tired I got, no matter what. This was my shoot. I hired this guy. He was my friend. I cared about him. I would not let him go. I did the maneuver again and again. Where was that effing piece of steak? Brrr. Steve suddenly growled. "He's talking," I panted. Then Steve shuddered, coughed a few times, and something unrecognizable rolled out of his mouth, dropping into his plate with a splat. We all stared at the formless alien mass, half expecting it to quiver and replicate right there. But then Steve's gasps for air brought our attention back to his wobbling body, and we quickly seated him. Like magic, the color came back to his face. It was as if he was rejoining us from some distant place. I slumped back into my chair and caught my breath. We all caught our breath. We looked at each other for a few seconds and laughed. Just another moment on a shoot. Most of our meal was still in front of us, and it was pretty good. We just had to remember to chew thoroughly. So we picked up where we left off, now with a new story to tell. All good, Steve? I asked. Yeah, thanks. He looked a little confused, but also a little hungry. He pushed aside the alien life form on his plate and went back to his steak. As I got reacquainted with my fish, I glanced over at the waiters and shot them a dirty look. They didn't even blink. Hey, John, thanks for saving Steve's life, JR matter-of-factly offered from across the table. Sure, JR. Happy to do it, I replied. I looked around the table at my crew, enjoying themselves after a hectic week. I was relieved, hungry, and ready for our next adventure. We were lucky. For us, Aruba was indeed one happy island. Thanks to musicians Jens East and Aaron Zim. Plus, thanks to JR, Gary, Big Steve, and all of you for joining today. You're listening to Come Fly With Me and other travel mischief. We'll be offering you a new episode every other week on Fridays. We'd love to hear your thoughts, comments, and your own travel adventures. Just head over to comefly.net. There you can check out show notes, more podcasts, and you can subscribe to future episodes. If you like what you heard today, please leave a review on iTunes. I'm John Lapidese, looking forward to traveling with you soon.